Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey Out podcast, where we were designed to be the helping hand for everyday people who are on their Exodus journey. I am one of your hosts, Bree.
And I'm Antoine.
And as you can see, we have a very special guest sitting in between us. So we know that November is a month filled with important national holidays, in particular National Family Caregivers Month and National Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. So today we wanted to invite a very special guest who was a caregiver to her grandmother and now a caregiver for her mom who lives with dementia, and how that propelled her into her starting her nonprofit geared to bringing assistance and resources to family caregivers caring for someone living with Alzheimer's and related dementias. So let's hop right on in.
What is home care?
How do I navigate healthcare?
What do I do when I feel down and depressed?
I'm stressed.
Am I enough?
What can I do?
What is this going to cost?
So we have Miss Veronica Shanklin. I call her the Family Caregiver Extraordinaire,
Yes.
And founder of Dementia Care Warriors. So tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about Family Caregiver Extraordinaire, you know?
So I am Veronica Shanklin, and I am a full-time caregiver for my mom. I was a full-time caregiver for my grandmother. And how that all started was over 10 years ago. I was living in Chicago. I was a single bachelorette, living my best life.
Right.
Had a corporate job, and everything was great. But back home, my mom was taking care of my grandmother, and she was kind of struggling to take care of my grandmother who had Alzheimer's disease. Long story short, eventually there was an incident with my grandmother, and my grandmother ended up in the hospital. She got kind of combative with my mom and another family member, ended up in the hospital, and I ended up flying down to try to help bring some stability to the situation.
Right.
And that's pretty much the beginning of my caregiving journey.
Oh, wow.
And so that was, again, like around 11 years ago.
With that, what is so cool with what you just said, you said your mom was caregiving for, was that her and her mom?
Wow.
And so now she's in the state where she needs you to care for her.
Right.
And that's just amazing in and of itself. Like, you know, if your mom was in a space where she understood, you know, she knows what you're going through, even with her not being in the state to understand that. And I think that's totally cool. So with that, caring for your mom, your grandmother, how's your caregiving journey? How has it been? Kind of talk to me a little bit about what a day in the life looks like for a caregiver.
Okay. So I do want to say I moved home to help my mom with my grandmother, and then a year later, my mom was diagnosed.
Oh,
So
wow.
then I cared for both of them.
And I know you kind of asked the question, but you was a bachelorette. You had your own,
Life.
I guess, life that you was on the journey on, right? And this changed your life.
Right.
So continue.
Okay. So a year later, my mom was diagnosed. So then I had both of them at the same time. And so that, in the beginning, in the early stages with my mom, of course, she was still able to help with my grandmother, and at least physically.
Okay.
You know, I was in charge of all the bills. I was in charge of making all the decisions for the household for all three of us.
Wow.
Okay.
In charge of doctor's appointments, and when I moved home, their diets were not very good, very high blood pressure, and swollen ankles and all that kind of stuff. So I came in and kind of fixed the diet and just kind of brought some stability to the situation, you know?
Right.
And so for the next 4 years, I took care of my mom and my grandmother at the same time. My grandmother passed in 2017.
Okay.
And a day in the life of a family caregiver, I talk to a lot of caregivers, and it's all different, you know, as we know.
Right.
For me, for my mom, just my mom right now, it involves every day. I'm helping her. I get her up. I get her dressed. I comb her hair, brush her teeth, get her breakfast, get her meals for the day, get her meds. Everything, you know, it's called the activities of daily living.
Right.
Is what they call it in the industry. And so I help her with all of those
So
things.
tell me this. With helping her with all those things, I'm going to ask the question that probably a lot of people won't understand, but why? Why did you continue to help your mother and your grandmother when, hey, you could have been living your own life?
That's a very good question. You know, it was just for me, it was second nature. It was, if not me, then who?
Right.
You know, and they took care of me.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I had a great childhood.
Right.
I wanted for very little, you know? And so they took care of me, and so now is my time to take care of them.
I love that. And so that's not easy. Again, like you said, you had your own life in Chicago. You were doing your own thing. Kind of what emotions as a family caregiver do you deal with on a day-to-day basis? And then let's just be honest. We know it's hard, so don't hold back. You know, you can give it to us.
Even though you make it look easy, but we know. Yes.
Listen, we've known Veronica for a long time.
Yes.
She does. She makes it look so easy.
So emotions. I would say, let's see, exhaustion, frustration, isolation. And honestly, I'm gonna be honest, some level of resentment.
Yes.
Because resentment with other family members who don't step in, and resentment also because, mother, why did you not set yourself up to be taken care of, in this time of your life, financially, or maybe there was insurance you could have gotten, or all of those things, to where it all falls on me.
Right.
So I hear a lot of emotions in that, right?
Yeah.
A lot of different thoughts. How do you deal with those in taking care of your loved one and also maintaining your emotions in those situations?
Right.
What is your go-to?
I would say therapy.
Okay.
That is sometimes frowned upon in our community,
Yes.
but I highly recommend getting a good therapist to talk through these emotions.
Right.
And also, self-care. Taking breaks and being intentional is something I preach all the time to caregivers, is being intentional about taking breaks, taking care of yourself, because it's not going to be easy,
It's not.
And even dealing with it's an ongoing journey. So even today is a good day, tomorrow might be a bad day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And understanding that that's just a part of the journey.
Yeah, and then too, it's like the little things. So you talked about like getting her up, getting her dressed, and things like that. Most of those emotions you're feeling in those little acts of doing, hey mom, let's put this shirt on, or let's put these pants on, or we gotta go to the doctor, but there is something on that table that is getting her attention and she has to touch it, right? It's those little things. And so kind of talk to us a little bit about how do you navigate through those type of situations.
For me, you have to understand sometimes it's okay to walk away. Because one of our big challenges right now, and it's interesting because I'm so well versed, as far as education. And so I know some things to expect.
Right.
So I remember previously, we didn't have issues with shower time.
Right.
She was fine. She would get in the shower. I hear about other people who have a loved one who literally hasn't bathed in weeks because they can't get them to bathe. And we weren't having those issues. But now it's harder to get her into the shower because I don't want to. And I'm like, okay, well, you need to.
Right.
And kind of going back and forth. And sometimes understanding that if I'm not in the mood and she's not in the mood, you know what?
Nothing is working.
You know what? We're going to take a step back.
Take a step back, yes.
I'll be back and leave you here. You know what I mean? Try again later. Try again the next day.
Yeah.
But being okay with knowing that sometimes it's okay to step back. And someone once told me, you will never win an argument with a person with Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Right.
True.
And that's important to remember because
feelings get involved.
Right. Feelings get involved. This is your mom, and hey, look, there's a million things that we have to do today. But also at the same time, their world is a lot different from ours. Where it's black and white here, it's pink and purple over there. And so we have to understand that. And so I think that's super important that you say that. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so we done went down into the journey of a day in the life of a caregiver, right? So when did you realize that, hey, I need to learn more about this disease or I need resources to help me?
Right.
Honestly, from the beginning.
Okay.
Because I'm a resource person anyway. So, like I said, I moved back to Dallas. I'm at home with my mom and my grandmother. I'm not working, at this time. And I'm just home. And I'm like, I'm online searching, trying to find resources. I actually ended up going to the Alzheimer's Association, doing a care consultation with them, with one of their volunteers, and then getting more involved with the Alzheimer's Association and finding resources, here and there. But a lot of it was searching online and not finding much, and then a lot of the resources that I did find came from being out in the community and networking and talking to other people.
So like what you found, so like those little roadblocks like that where you're searching, you can't find much. Why do you think that is? Why do you think when we're when we're looking for these resources, we can't find them, or they're not as easily accessible for families?
I will say that was 10 years ago. It has gotten better. I will say that there are a lot more blogs and, you know, and organizations like mine, you know, out here who are trying to do the work to help caregivers. But I think it's just a process, you know. It grows over time as more people become aware of the disease, more people are willing to offer resources, as organizations with resources and money become aware of how important this is, they start to offer more resources. You know, so, I mean, I think over time, it's slowly getting better. And then also there's a lot of stigma, you know, around the disease and a lot of denial, you know, from people who are caregivers, don't realize they're caregivers, you know, and don't just that D word, that that's not that. That's not what Mom asked.
Absolutely. You know? And so those resources, how important do you think it is for them to be able to access those resources, but also have like a village and a support system like around you as you kind of navigate family caregiving as a whole?
Very important. I think those are the two things that a caregiver really needs is community and education. And even though I've been on this journey for 10 years, I've taken all kinds of classes, I have certifications, I still sit in on trainings or classes and learn things that I'm like, the world, the community, dementia caregivers need to know this information because it will make your journey just a little better and easier.
A little bit easier,
So, and I want to ask about this. The conversation with the doctor, when you learned about that diagnosis, what happened during that time? How did you feel?
Well, for my mom, it was so cut and dry. It was so not very helpful. It was so, I promise y'all, I walked out of that appointment when she got her diagnosis and said, I should have been a neurologist. I was like, because if that's all we get and that's all he's going to do, I was like, I can do that. Even though clearly I know there's more to neurology than that. But just based on that experience, I was like, he was like, all right, come back in maybe, I don't know if it was 3 months or 6 months. But he was like, you know, come back. And you know what? It's interesting because I had the conversation. We switched. We switched doctors, you know, after that because I just didn't feel, you know, helpful. But eventually I had a conversation with a neurologist one time and I said, how does it feel to know that there's not really much you can do? You know, I mean, with this disease, like the comeback in 6 months is pretty standard. But you can also say there are resources to help.
That's what I was going to ask.
You know,
like, what you wanted to hear.
I want you to give me some resources. I want you to tell me this is not, you know, the end. You can, because even in those early days, my mom and I, we still traveled, we still went to concerts, we still did events. People feel like you get this diagnosis and it's the end, go sit in a chair in the back room somewhere and it's over. And that's definitely not the case. You know?
Wow. So tell me, you was part of a film. Refresh my memory on that film real quick.
I was a part of a film called Wine, Women, and Dementia.
Yes, it was
and
nice.
It's directed by Kitty from Portland, Oregon. And actually, it will be on PBS in November.
No way.
Stay tuned. Follow us. Stay tuned for more, you know, details on that. And Kitty was one of those blogs that she had a blog called Stumptown Dementia. And it was one of those blogs that I found when I was doing my research. And her writing was so amazing and it was just so real. And I ended up reaching out to her, complimenting her, you know, on her writing, reposted one of her posts, and we kind of became friends and started communicating.
That's awesome.
Then when her mom passed, she decided she wanted to do a documentary and go around the country and talk to caregivers that she'd met on her journey. And I was one of those caregivers. So
that is so awesome.
It was an amazing experience.
I mean, in that film, that film
nice.
Really, it kind of changed even my thought process. I mean, we go through this every day. We've been doing this 8 years. You know, we had the time with my great-grandmother that we had, and just seeing it from different perspectives from everybody and kind of in the film, even with Kitty and kind of what she went through, it's just phenomenal what family caregivers do as a whole. And I'm glad that she was able to highlight and celebrate that at the same time.
And in that, it helped me learn that it's okay to not feel okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to be angry about the situation. It's okay to feel how you feel, but in the same time, hey, it's resources out there, and because of the person that you love, you're taking care of.
Right.
Hey, you just get back up the next day and put your pants on,
And
one leg at a time, and go.
And go.
One way that Kitty and I connected was because we were both like, you gotta find some laughter, some joy,
yes. Yeah.
something in this journey. It cannot be all dark and
Right.
terrible. And it's interesting because when I first started this journey, all the blogs that I saw were very sad
Yes.
and very dark,
Yeah.
etc. And I'm just coming into it like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna be like that. We're gonna
Right.
find. And I will say, 10 years later, I get it.
Right.
I get why everything
Yeah.
is so dark, but you
Yeah.
have to be intentional about finding moments of joy.
Exactly, because it's tough, and then if you just kind of stay in the dark, you're never going to get through it. So with the resources, you said, hey, I want to bring extra resources and supports to family caregivers just like ourselves, and you started Dementia Care Warriors, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Tell us more about that.
Yes.
So, again, I was volunteering with the Alzheimer Association and coming across all of these resources that I didn't see the caregivers in my community having
Yes.
access to or knowledge of.
Yeah.
So I kind of started just being this resource for my friends or, other people who I knew who were on this journey.
Right.
And I started a support group. And so it started with support group happy hour because, again, I've been to enough support groups that were very
Right.
Yeah,
Right. I understand.
yeah.
So we started support group happy hour, and we would meet at a Mexican restaurant once a month, and over tacos and margaritas, vent, lean on each other, share resources,
Yeah.
and the things that go on with support groups, but just in a more laid back and upbeat,
right.
Right.
environment. So we started with the support groups, and that was in 2019. I also, before I had Dementia Care Warriors, or before I had the 501c3, did an event with the Alzheimer's Association at my
Awesome.
church.
Awesome.
And so we did like a conference for African American caregivers at my church, and eventually got the 501c3. And again, that was 2019, right before the pandemic.
COVID.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
COVID.
So one of the things that I wanted to do was a caregiver conference. And so I came up with Revive Refresh.
Yes.
Yes.
Revive and fresh.
And the
yes.
first Revive Refresh was going to be in March 2020. And of course, March 2020 came. But
Yes.
Revive Refresh was going to be a day to pour into dementia family caregivers.
Yeah.
And for caregivers, by caregivers, and all of the things that I felt like caregivers would want out of a conference. And
Right.
not your typical caregiver conference.
Right.
So live DJ, catered brunch,
And
because no
yes.
box lunches.
Right.
A vendor resource fair, amazing speakers, and volunteers who love on caregivers.
Right.
And so that was the plan for Revive Refresh.
And Revive and fresh is awesome. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
I mean,
Yes, it's awesome.
she have massages going on, and you be having the whole nine. So what with Revive Refresh? Like you said, it's to pour on family caregivers. But what do you want them to take away from when they leave that moment and they leave that meeting, that gathering? What do you want them to take away from that?
I want them to take away knowing that they're not alone.
Right.
Right.
I want them to take away the education that they received from the amazing speakers that we had. This year we had breakout sessions and we had keynote speakers. And so all the things that you learned from them, I want you to take with you. And just to know that somebody out here cares.
Right.
Because this is a very isolating role,
Yeah.
that we're in. And you also find that it's hard sometimes to talk to people who have not been here.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Like if I tell you that my mom did something strange, for lack of a better word,
Right.
another caregiver is likely to understand
Understand
that.
what
Oh
that
yeah,
is.
my
Yes,
mom.
yes.
Yeah.
I had a caregiver tell me that she was telling a friend that her husband was doing something, and the friend was like, "Oh, girl, I do that too." It
Yeah.
was like, it's not the same.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. I think also too that could be. We deal with a lot of families, and one of the big things that they say a lot of times is, he just doing that because that's how he was back in the day. Yeah, and that happens a lot, and that's kind of where that frustration or that isolation kind of comes from, because we remember who they were but prior to that disease. And then when they start bringing in those older parts of them that kind of seeps through, and you're like, oh no, I know she's just playing or he's just playing. And so kind of being able to kind of understand that and kind of combat that. So that's great that you said that.
So what I want you to do now is tell us what's next with Dementia Care Warriors.
Yes.
What do you have going on next?
So what's next with Dementia Care Warriors? So first, Dementia Care Warriors, our mission is to provide resources and support to dementia family caregivers. And we do this through a respite scholarship program. We do this community education. We do a monthly support group meeting. And we are forming a wonderful community of dementia family caregivers.
Yes.
And so next month coming up is National Family Caregiver Month. And that's a huge month for us at Dementia Care Warriors. It's also our birthday month. And so we do a lot for National Family Caregiver Month, starting with Faces of Care Warriors.
Yes.
Faces of Care Warriors.
Care
Okay.
Warriors. Yes.
Yes, give us the deets.
Hold on. So Faces of Care Warriors is when?
Nope, the first event is November 1st.
Tell me about it.
Okay. So Faces of Care Warriors, we do a professional photo shoot with caregivers and their loved ones. And so this is our second year doing it.
Yes.
And we actually bring them out to a photo studio with a photographer. They get dressed up. They come and we treat them like stars.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And so then we have these beautiful photos and images that are a part of this photo exhibit. So November 1st is the night that we unveil this second installment of the Faces of Care Warriors photo exhibit. It's also our annual fundraiser for Dementia Care Warriors.
Awesome.
And it's kind of a cocktail-style reception. There we invite the community out to help us honor and celebrate these caregivers, to honor some community partners, and just have a good time and, come and celebrate.
That's awesome. Now, she's always just being so humble, but y'all had to see
It was beautiful.
what she did last year.
Yes, it was beautiful.
It
The
was
pictures that was taken
amazing.
at the studio was beautiful. Everything that you put, you go 100% all
You
the
do.
time.
She goes
Top
100%
shelf.
every time, and so you really don't want to miss that, because I think just the emotions that those portraits evoked when
Right.
you were able to see them, they were in black and white.
Yes.
So you were actually just being able to see them and their loved one who was dealing with dementia, and it really brought tears to our eyes, because we were like, a lot of these families, when was the last time where they were able to even take a photo? Or all those different things. So I thought it's just amazing. And so y'all don't want to miss that. What time will it be on the 1st?
So November 1st at 6:30 at Urban Arts Center.
Okay,
and
awesome.
They can visit our website for more information. Can I talk about the other part?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Go
Come
ahead.
on.
Go ahead, Tom.
So there's that November 1st kickoff, and then it's a photo exhibit that travels, and so it will also be at Dallas Public Libraries during the month of November, at the White Rock branch and the Polk Wisdom branch during the month of November, and then again. All of this ties together. So we have an education event at the library. We're also doing a yoga reset event for caregivers, for dementia family caregivers in November. That'll be yoga and a sound meditation.
Yeah.
DIY essential oils. And so it's just a huge month for us for
Wow.
dementia family caregivers.
So where can they find, like all the events that you just talked about, where can they find all of that and
Give
get
me
all
that,
the resources that they can so they can come to those events?
So you can find all this information on our website at dementiacarewarriors.org. Make sure you visit the website and you join our email list so you can stay in the loop of all the amazing things we have coming up for November and just moving forward in the future. And also follow us on social media on Instagram and Facebook at Care Warriors.
Well, Veronica, I thank you so much for being here with us today and just giving us a little insight into family caregiving, especially with this being Family Caregiving Month. We want to make sure that they have all the resources needed. So to gather all of what we talked about today, please click the link in our bio, taking you over to our podcast website to be able to download everything we discussed today, transcribed just for you under the transcript tab. Also, please go to dementiacarewarriors.org so that way you can get all the information that she was discussing today, as well as get all the event information, because that's super important. You don't want to miss those. If you enjoyed what you've heard today and would like to hear more, please subscribe and follow us on YouTube at The Journey Out, and as well as follow us on all podcast platforms. On our podcast website, you can support The Journey Out podcast with a monthly donation of your choosing, helping us to continue to provide these episodes every week. Your contribution is more than appreciated, and we thank you. And with that, that's a wrap on today's episode of The Journey Out. We pray that the things discussed today have been a helping hand for you and the ones you hold close, positively bringing you out of one season to the next, starting your Exodus journey.
And I thank you, Ms. Shanklin, for
Thank
coming
you
on.
for
And I
having
hope the
me.
knowledge that you guys got from this podcast help you grow, self-improvement, right?
Yes.
And you become a resource for your family and also your community.
All right, we're out.
out.
See y'all later.
You.